Yeah, so thanks for joining my drawing class. Yeah, interesting stuff. We're going to do some good art. So here's the supply list. We got pencil, a ruler. So the reason for having a ruler isn't that you mainly use a ruler for a lot of your drawing, but in the first weeks we're going to try to do some perspective, and some people like having straight lines, especially for being able to connect the vanishing points and stuff. Tone paper. So here's an example of tone paper. And the reason I really like tone paper is because it does really neat effects. So that, for example, let's say I'm drawing something right here. I don't know, like a ball, right? And here's the shadow. I can put in the kind of like a little reflective surfaces really easily, and it looks very cool. So I would suggest that you don't have to get it. Pretty much any big piece of paper like this is going to work, but I do like tone paper. I just think it looks neat. Let's see what else. We have soft chalk and pastels. It's again one of those things where you don't have to get it, but I think it's better than a pencil. You would want a white piece of pastel and a black piece of pastel. Vine charcoal is just it tends to erase better than the pastels do. Fixative. So right here is a can of fixative. This happens to be gloss fixative, but you actually want a matte fixative. And what you do is you spray this on outdoors after you finish up your drawing, and it keeps the drawing from smudging. And yeah, so that's basically it. So I just wanted to say, like, real quick, you know, if this is like your first time doing art, right? Like your very first art class, it's hard, okay? It's like, let's say you were learning for the first time how to play the violin. Well, the first 3 weeks of playing the violin, you're gonna have a hard time getting a good note. It's just gonna screech. Or if you were playing the trumpet for the first time, you know, I can almost certainly guess that if I started playing the trumpet, which I've never played, the first 3 weeks, I would just have a hard time even getting the first note out. So don't get frustrated. If you're having a hard time, please just let me know, and we'll work together and we'll figure it out. It'll be fun, it'll be good. But there's no way I can help you unless I know. So let's just quickly go over the syllabus here. Basically, the idea is to start off with really simple geometric shapes. So I'll go back to what I just started here. This is a geometric shape right here. This is a ball, right? It's a sphere. So whenever you're doing balls and spheres, you know that they are symmetrical on some level, right? The left and the right are pretty much the same size. But that's not the case with everything. So for example, let's say you're doing a cube. This is the front of your cube, right? The sides here are obviously going to be different, right? This line here is actually a different length than this line here. And then we're going to actually get into why that's the case, like really soon here. See, actually. Oh, the other thing I kind of forgot to talk about is an eraser. You probably want to get a kneaded eraser. So here I'm going to actually just fix the top a little bit. And I'm going to put in a little bit of white on the top. And maybe there's a little bit of white in the front here too. And let's say there's a little bit of a shadow here. And the shadow comes off a little bit into the distance. Okay, so we have cubes, we have spheres, and we're also going to do ellipses. So I'll quickly show you an ellipse. And then we're going to go more deeply into how these things actually work. So here's our ellipse. And see how this can quickly become like a coffee cup or something. Yep, and might as well put in the bright side of it. All right. Cool. So anyway, like I said, so my name's Jeff Halverson, and I'm just hoping that people have a good time in my class. All right. See ya. All right, so let's start with drawing a cube in perspective. So what we're going to do, we're going to draw a line maybe a little bit in the middle of our piece of paper, but a little bit above the middle. It doesn't have to be exactly in the middle. And just to give some sense of what this is about, we can draw some little mountains. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a square right here in the middle. It really doesn't have to be anywhere in particular, but let's say a little bit down from this line here. And now we want to draw the edges of our square. How will we end up doing that? So let me get a cube here to kind of show you what it is we're trying to do. So this is not actually perfectly cubed, but it does give you some sense of what we're trying to do. So we're looking straight on at a cube. Well, how do we kind of show the sides like that, you see? Or how would we show just the top like that? What is it that we need to do? Well, it's fudging reality a little bit, but what we do is we draw a point right there, and then we draw from the edges of our box. Okay, so we might as well make this box nice and neat. And from this point here, and this point here, we're going to draw a line to that point on the horizon. That's why this is called one-point perspective. See what I'm doing? So all these lines go off into the distance. And the reason they go off into the distance is because over here, this is far away. So let's say we're drawing a little tree. This tree would be really tiny. A tree closer right here would be quite a bit bigger. And a tree right here would be really big. But the line behind, this line is going to be bigger than this line. This line is going to be bigger than this line, right? So does that make sense? If this one is closer, then it's bigger. This line here is further away, it's shorter, but they're parallel to each other this way, just as this line is parallel to this line is parallel to that line. Okay, so the only lines that are not parallel are the ones that are going into the distance. Okay, and we can actually erase these lines right here. And we could put cubes pretty much anywhere. Like, for example, we could put another cube right here next to the tree. So let's get rid of the tree just to give a little more room. How about right here, we'll put a cube. Can we see that cube pretty well? Yeah. And then these lines also go into the distance, right to that same vanishing point. Although it could be a different vanishing point, but then it would be two-point perspective, which we'll get to in a minute. And what I'll do is I'll just darken up all these lines so you can see them better. So I'm going to do this again here just to show you real quickly how you do this perspective. Now this horizon line can really be anywhere. It could be way up here, it could be down below, it could be in the middle. So the idea usually is that if you're near the ground and the horizon line is further down, and then you got a large sky above. If you're looking down on the ground, then you would put the horizon line way up here, and then you're looking at a fairly large area down below. But let's just say that our horizon line is going to be right about here, near the middle. So we'll just go ahead and put that in. And let's say there is a building like right here. So in order to make this building, I'm just going to make a cube. So these lines here are parallel. This line here is above the horizon. This line here is below the horizon. And these lines here are the sides of our house. And in order to find the middle of my house, in order to put, let's say, a roof on this thing, we'll use the old X technique. Put basically an X in the middle of my cube. So if I go straight up, that'll be the top of my house, the slanted roof. And let's say that our horizon line is like right about here, okay? So the horizon, the vanishing point doesn't have to be right in the middle. It could be on the side. You just have to do this on your own a few times and you'll see how these things actually work. So that's one wall. Now I'm going to put actually the side of my wall right here. So it's parallel with this line. And then this line here is going to go towards the horizon. Maybe the edge of my roof will also go towards the horizon. And you can barely just see maybe the top of the roof a little bit. And let's see, this line here is going to be paralleled by this line right here. Could put a little chimney over on this side if we want. And we can put a little door right here. Notice how the top of the door is right about at the horizon line. The bottom is going down a little bit. Maybe some little stairs. And we can put a road in. Put another building over on this side if we wanted. So the roof goes this way. Some little trees, some mountains, some clouds, and you know, maybe some more clouds over on this side. Maybe some more trees. And let's say we wanted to actually just add a little bit of shadow in this. Well, let's say the sun is coming down, I don't know, maybe this direction. Then we'd add the shadows down over on this side. And our tree would also have some shadows. And if there's a tree over here, they would have a little bit of shadow. Anyway, we will talk a bit more about shadows and the value scale at a later date. But let's now go to 2-point perspective. So this was 1-point perspective, right? Just 1 point. Now we're going to go to 2-point perspective. So that was 1-point perspective. Basically, 1-point perspective represents a cube like this, right? And if we were going to draw that cube, basically it looks like a cube like this, where these angles, these lines here are going inward, right? Just like that. So if you could see the line here and the line right here, they're going basically in and in like that. But what happens if we have our cube pretty much going like that, right? So in other words, we have our cube with lines going in and in like that, right? In other words, these lines are going in and then these lines are going in like that, right? Basically like that. How do we actually draw that carefully? So let's go ahead and put in our horizon. Maybe right here. And we'll have a vanishing point right here, and we'll have a vanishing point right here. Now in real life, usually vanishing points are way off in the distance. But in this case, we're just gonna squeeze these vanishing points in. There's gonna be a little distortion. And we're gonna put one line right here. And we'll put another line right here. And then at the top of our box, we're going to put a line right in here. And we'll put a line right in here. So these are the sides of our box. And then there's a line from here to here also, the top of our box. And there's a line from this corner to this vanishing point. So you see that there's a little triangle here that represents the top of our box, right? If the sun were coming down this way, then this side would be kind of in shadow, and then we'd have a shadow right over here. Now let's say we could actually see through this box. Well then, right, this box was made out of glass or something. We could actually see the inside of the box here, and we'd see the inside of the box on this side. Yeah, let me see how we could. So you see there's a triangle right here. It's a little diamond, and then there's a diamond here, and that diamond gets smaller and smaller as you get closer to the horizon line. Now let's say you are actually looking at the box from, you know, the box somehow floated up above the horizon. So you could draw the bottom of the box like this. You'd have the corner of the box right here. And then you'd see the bottom of the box right here. And you'd see the bottom of the box on this side right here. So again, it makes a little diamond shape right there. Yeah, so that's 2-point perspective. So one possibility would be to try to draw an image like this. Like you can pretty clearly see the perspective. Like these railroad tracks are going off into the horizon. This would be the vanishing point right here. So you could draw this either as 2-point perspective or 1-point perspective. There'd be definitely some distortion if you drew this side as with 1-point perspective, but you know, it could be done. So that would be an interesting assignment, trying to draw some railroad tracks. So we're going to start off with an actual object to be drawn in perspective here. And we'll start with this cube. Now clearly we have one side here going off to the horizon. We have another side here going off to the horizon. Let's see if we can actually demonstrate that. So if we are looking at this, the way I would view this is I would see this as you've got one line here, and do you see how it's actually kind of at a 45-degree angle? So noticing that angle is going to be really important as the first steps in drawing this box. Then we're going to have another line down here. It's going to be a little bit more tilted this way. Same thing with this one here. We're going to draw that one in. And then this one here is going to be tilted a little more in this way. So we can kind of guess that our horizon line's way up here. Then these lines go all the way to that horizon. Now we might not be able to actually draw in that horizon because it'll be off our paper. This one here might fit into our paper. But we can kind of see it in our own mind's eye in any case. So let's give that a try. So I'm going to now demonstrate drawing this box here For this demonstration, I'm actually taking a photograph, and that photograph helps me because I have to be able to kind of get out of the way of the camera here in order to draw for you. But it'd be good for you to learn how to both draw from a photograph as well as from reality. The ability to draw from reality is actually fairly important. So the first thing I'm going to actually do is I'm going to look for the angle of this line here and these lines here, okay? And I know that they do go off to a horizon line. They do go off to a vanishing point way off in the distance, right? This line here will be tilted a little bit more upward. This line here will be tilted a little bit more downward. So that's one way of just starting, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just basically eyeball this thing. See what happens. So I'm looking at this line here, and there could well be a lot of fixing that goes on. And I see another line that kind of goes, it's pretty close to straight across, but goes up a little. And then we have another line that goes this way, and we have another line that goes. So you see, I'm looking at what's the relationship between this angle and this angle. This one here is a little bit to the right. This angle is a little bit to the right of this angle. And it goes off this way. So I'm trying to get this basic diamond shape correct right from the start. And I see also that this right-hand side is a little bit smaller. This side here is a little bit smaller than this side. And then this line here on the bottom is pretty angled compared to this line. Sure, that might be a little much. I'm trying to make sure that my lines are basically straight up and down too. That may be a problem right now. Yeah, I think I'm going to fix this line. It's a little bit, could be a little bit more straight up and down. And so if I fix that one, I have to fix all the others too. Yep, and now I'm going to take a step back and see how it looks. Well, it's not too far off. So really quickly, I'm also going to show you how I shade this. All right, so I'm looking at this thing and I'm seeing that this side here is much darker than this side. The top is definitely the lightest. So I'm just going to quickly shade this in. And I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow on the back side here. A little bit of a shadow coming off like this. If I wanted to, I could shade the whole back also. Now let's say we're doing the same box, but we're doing it like sitting down, and we're basically hardly seeing the top at all here. So how would this work? Well, we still have this line down here that's going upward towards the horizon line. This line here, basically it's really right, almost right at the horizon line, and the same with this line right here. So what we're going to show is just maybe the tiniest slither of a diamond at the top. Yeah, let's give that a try. So I've got this photograph here that I'm going to be working from. I think I want to insist that you actually try to draw from what you actually see, even though it definitely helps using photographs at times. So anyway, I'm going to put in a horizon line, since I think in this actual situation, drawing in the horizon line probably doesn't hurt. So here goes the horizon line, and the side of my box is going to be pretty much right in the middle here. It's going to go very close to the horizon line, and one of the sides is going to go this direction, and the other side is going to go this direction. And then these sides are going to go very close towards the horizon. Maybe bring it down a little bit. This one's going to go this way. So now I'm looking at my photograph here. It does look like we do see the edge right here a tiny bit at the very top. But it almost, like you almost don't see it. And this side goes all the way to here. Yeah, I got to keep my line straight. And then we got, and we can try to get the top a little more clear. And this one here a little more clear. So you see the little diamond here, and then we can darken in this side. I think my initial line wasn't all that straight right in the middle. It's important to get these lines straight. I think I'm going to redo this line. And we can get that shadow in on this side. So the point I'm trying to demonstrate is that this little triangle at the top, or little diamond shape at the top, it's very thin. And if the box was just even a little further up, it would just be a straight line. Like you wouldn't see anything. Basically what you would see is it'd go just straight up to the horizon line like that. And what you would see is just a straight box, just like that. Our next project is how to do ellipses. So for example, you see the top of this little paint can. How do we draw it so we're basically looking at it like this? And this is like the quick and dirty way. Basically what you start off with is a little cross, right? A little cross like this, straight. And they should be the same on the top as on the bottom, and the same on the sides. So what we're doing is we're essentially starting off with a larger line at the top, a larger line at the bottom, and then smaller little turns on the sides, right? So you're seeing how it's turning this way, but it's a sharper turn here and a sharper turn here. And then these things get connected like that. And then we fix it as we go along. So these four sides should be, roughly speaking, the same. And you can see how I'm kind of fixing it as I go along. I have to look, right? So this is another example of symmetry, how to make things symmetrical on all four sides. So that's the beginnings of an ellipse, right? And then our can would go down like that. And what we'll do next is we're going to do a more exacting version of the same thing, right? Because this is not exactly perfect, and it does take some time to kind of perfect these things. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this basically perfectly symmetrical shape to demonstrate. So we have the top right here, we have a side, we have a side, we have a side right here. So clearly all these work together, and you see how roundy it is on the very ends. Right here it's very round, right here it's very round. A lot of times people tend to make these things a little pointy at the ends, and they're definitely not pointy. They're round at the ends. So a lot of times people tend to make these things too pointy. I think I've done that myself in the past. So you're tending to make like this, but it actually goes round at the ends. And this side is round at the ends. And if you want to know for sure if these things are all really the same, you turn it into a big pizza. You cut it into parts. So this part here, these 4 parts should all actually really look the same. So we're next going to work on this object right here. Now clearly you can see an ellipse at the top. This is the back edge, this is the front edge. And what you want to do in a drawing like this is you want to make sure that this is straight across your paper like this. For example, let's say the table is a little tilted and it's like this. It's not going to look any good. No matter what, you want this to be straight across until you decide you want to do some strange kind of modern piece. But yeah, for normal still lifes, you want this to be nice and up and down. So I got my photograph right here that I'm going to be doing. Kind of gives a sense of this is actually fairly squashed, right? This ellipse is not a great big ellipse. It's a fairly small ellipse. And what I've done here is I've already drawn out something nice and the cross lines that'll help me line this whole thing up. So it goes up and down like this. So this will be actually the middle of the jar. So if I put a line right here and a line right here, that looks about, and then I do this fairly out to the side like this. I could actually even measure it. So this side is what? About a little less than 4 inches. We want this side to also be about, whoop, I didn't quite do it long enough on one side. And it's partly because it's difficult for me to step back from this angle the way I'm drawing it and trying to not cover over the camera. But anyway, so I'm going to start putting in this ellipse. And it's a fairly thin little thing. I got to take a look back a little bit. Yeah, I can see that it's a little fatter on this side than on this side. So maybe widen this side a little bit. Get out my eraser. And I can see it's a little bit squished over on this side. So you can see how I'd spend quite a bit of time just trying to fix these things. And then on the bottom, right down here, because we're looking at this in perspective and things on the bottom are less squished than as they go up, we're going to make this one a little bit bigger. But actually, if we were following this exactly, it would fall off the edge of the page over on this side. So let's just do this one down here, okay? So this goes down a little bit. And we could draw out a whole nother ellipse that would kind of look right through the paper if we wanted to. So we have one here, one here. And this is going to help us get that proper round thing on the edges. So basically this ellipse kind of follows this ellipse right above it, maybe a tiny bit bigger, but really hardly at all because it's really almost at the same level as the horizon line. And then this keeps on going straight down. And we could just start thinking about the shadow on this left-hand side here. So in order to do that, we just make this left side quite a bit darker. And then it gets a little lighter as we go to the right. This is quite a bit darker. And it gets a little bit lighter as we go to the right. Yeah, we could put in just a little bit of the background over here if we wanted to. So gives you a sense of these ellipses. These ellipses are important if you want to do still lifes because, well, there's just 1,000 still lifes to be done. You know, if there was a pot, right, if you could see inside this pot, right, let's say there was a shadow coming in on this side. This is the lip of our pot, and we could have some little plants coming out this way. Yep. And so our last shape, so this would be something that we would work on in week 3, is the sphere. And the way that you actually really give a sense of the shape of the sphere is by looking at the shadow. So you have a shadow on this side, and then you have the light side on this side. And in between, you have a kind of a grayish sort of transitional area. And you really want to get a sense of like, what's the actual angle of that shadow? So in this case, the dark side is kind of a little moon shape on this side. Yeah, that's basically what we're going to draw next. So I'm going to work with it from a photograph again. It just helps to demonstrate. You can see that I've actually turned up the contrast in this photograph, and I've made it a grayscale. And you can see that this side here is quite light, then you have a large middle area, and then you have a dark area. And the dark, obviously the light is coming in from the top right and making the bottom left darker. There might be tiny little reflections from other things on the bottom side, but the best thing to do is just to ignore that. All right, so here goes. So I'm starting off with a cross again, just because it's going to help me get that symmetry for my circle. Let's just make all 4 sides roughly the same. And I'm going to try to get a nice circle in here. See how I start off nice and light. I can even think a little bit about the shadow at the bottom here. Looks like this side here needs to be a little bit bigger. So for demonstration purposes, I'm not going to make things perfect, but you can really work on this for a long time, just if you really want something to look nice and round, okay? So I'm going to make this side a little darker. And I know that my shadow is going to begin right about here, and it's going to end right about there. And so it's going to do this. Now, notice that this shadow area is actually the beginnings of an ellipse. If I could see through it, it would be an ellipse, right? But because I can't see through the ball, I'm going to erase this part right here. And I'm going to go ahead and make this whole area fairly dark. And then this area here is going to be fairly light. And at this point, I can kind of get rid of these lines. This area here is fairly dark. There's a bit of a shadow, and there's a background that's somewhat darker back here. Oop, dropping my tools. So this area is the area that's the lightest. We could actually darken up the edges a tiny bit because the light is kind of hitting more of the front area, right about here. These areas are going to be maybe a tiny bit darker, a little bit darker at the bottom, maybe a really dark spot right here on the edge. So that's how you do a ball.